If stories about second chances, found family, and quiet healing speak to you, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next emotional story we share on this channel. The rain in Los Angeles wasn't supposed to sound like this. It hammered against metal and concrete, turned the alley into a narrow river, drummed on the warped plywood above Mara Lane's head until it felt like the sky was trying to shake her loose. She woke with a jolt, heart racing, cardboard flattened under her back, the smell of damp asphalt in her nose. For a second, she didn't know where she was. Then the ache in her shoulder and the weight of the backpack under her hand reminded her the loading dock behind a shuttered store, Beverly Hills, close enough to the big houses that security guards pass sometimes, far enough that most people pretended not to see the girl sleeping under the overhang. The rain slanted in despite the concrete lip above, soaking the edges of her blanket. Her fingers were stiff with cold. She pushed herself up, blinking against the neon blur of taillights smearing red on the wet street. A car came too fast down the hill, tires hissing on the slick pavement. Headlights spread across the road like water. Something moved in front of it. A pale blur. A shape low to the ground. A dog. Mara saw the reflection of fur in the headlights, a heartbeat before the driver laid on the horn. She didn't think. Feet hit wet concrete. The cardboard slid away under her knees. She was running before her brain caught up, rain slapping her face, backpack thumping against her spine. The dog froze in the middle of the street, eyes wide in the glare. Its paws scrambled for purchase, claws scraping uselessly on the painted line. Mara hurled herself forward. Her hands found thick, soaked fur. She wrapped her arms around the animal's chest and let her own momentum carry them both sideways. They hit the curb in a messy roll. Pain burst along her ribs as she slammed into the concrete. The dog yelped, then scrambled, nails digging into her jacket. Brakes squealed. The car fishtailed, headlights skidding across the building beside them, then stopped with a shudder a few feet away. "Are you insane?" a voice shouted through the open window, high with panic. "What the?" Mara didn't answer. The world had narrowed to the heartbeat punching in her ears and the animal in her arms. It was a husky, big and wet and trembling, breath puffing in quick clouds. Its fur was white and gray, soaked dark along its back. A metal tag hung from its collar, glittering when the headlights hit it. "It's okay," she whispered, not sure who she was talking to. "You're okay. You're okay." The driver cursed once more and then, seeing no one dead, threw the car into gear and tore off, taillights disappearing into the curtain of rain. The husky stood, paws braced on the curb, shaking. It turned its head toward a sound, someone calling in the distance, but the rain swallowed the voice. Mara sat for a second on the curb, chest heaving, hair plastered to her forehead. The dog looked back at her. Its eyes were light, almost silver in the glow of the street lamp. "Hey," she said, softer now. "You lost." She reached for the metal tag. The dog flinched, then stilled, as if deciding to trust her. "Comet," the tag said, in neat engraved letters. Underneath, a phone number, an address she didn't recognize, somewhere on one of the streets that curved up into the hills. Her stomach sank. Of course he belonged up there. The rain ran down the back of her neck, cold as metal. Her phone, the cheap pay-as-you-go she'd used to call temp agencies, had been lifted out of her backpack 3 days ago while she dozed outside a coffee shop. She hadn't realized until hours later. The kiosk where she'd bought it didn't take cash anymore, which meant the numbers on the tag were a code she could read but not use. "Of course," she muttered. Comet whined, shifting his weight from paw to paw. "Okay," she said, pushing herself up. Her ribs ached. "Okay, let's get out of the rain first." She looped her fingers through his collar and led him back toward the alley. The loading dock was too exposed now, edges dripping cold water. She went farther, down past dumpsters and a flickering security light, to a side door that didn't close all the way. Beyond it lay an old parking garage that had been empty for months. During the day, light seeped in through cracks and dirty windows. At night, it was just shadow and echo and the smell of oil. Mara had slept there when it was too risky to stay near the street. She had a corner claimed on the second level, behind a concrete pillar, a little nest of blankets and cardboard and two plastic crates. She led Comet there now. He sniffed everything, tail low but wagging cautiously. When she spread her thin blankets out again and patted the spot beside her, he hesitated only a second before curling up, body heat seeping through the damp fabric. Mara shrugged out of her hoodie, the night air knifed across her arms instantly. "Here," she said, draping the hoodie over him. "You'll freeze." He huffed, as if offended, then burrowed into the fabric, nose disappearing under the hood. She dug into her backpack, fingers closing around the familiar edges of her life. A dented can of beans, a crust of bread in a plastic bag, a small, worn wooden box with a sliding lid. She set the box aside carefully. Her mother's story box. Inside were pages of images, her mother's drawings and her own. Bears in scarves, little girls with wings made of leaves, houses with crooked chimneys and windows that glowed with impossible colors. Stories that had never gotten past their living room. Stories her mother had told in a soft voice late at night, when bill collectors weren't knocking and the electricity was still on. Mara opened the can with a wrist flick she'd done 100 times. The metal rasped. The smell of beans hit her nose salty, sharp. She scooped half into a plastic cup for herself, then tipped the rest into a cracked bowl, breaking the bread into pieces and mixing it in. Comet's head popped up when the food smell hit. His nose twitched. "Don't look at me like that," she said, but she was smiling. "I know, it's not steak." She pushed the bowl toward him. He sniffed once, then inhaled the meal like he'd never eaten anything so wonderful. She watched him, cup in hand. The beans were cold and a little metallic, but they were food. She felt them hit her stomach, felt her muscles unclench in the smallest way. When both bowls were empty, Comet licked his lips and then, with a sigh that sounded almost human, flopped down again with his head on her knee. Mara leaned back against the concrete pillar, staring into the dim space in front of her. The rain echoed in the distance, muffled by layers of concrete. She slid the lid off the story box. The sketchbook on top fell open to a page she'd drawn last month on a night not unlike this one. A girl in a too-big coat, holding a lantern that cast a small circle of light. Beside her, Shambo, a dog with a star caught in his fur. Her mother would have said something like, "Once there was a girl who found a star in the rain." Mara swallowed. She rested one hand on Comet's back, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing. With the other, she picked up a pencil stub and started to draw. She drew the curve of his ear, the line of his neck, the way his fur tufted out around the collar. She shaded his eyes until they glowed even on the cheap paper. Her fingers cramped, but she kept moving, lines finding their own way. When she finished, she set the pencil down and looked at the sleeping dog, then at the drawing. "In case I forget you tomorrow," she murmured. Her eyes burned. She shifted carefully, pulling the blanket up around them both. As she drifted towards sleep, half listening to the rain in the distant city, she whispered the beginning of a story into Comet's fur. Once there was a girl who saved a star in the rain. Comet! The shout dragged her up from a dream of warm kitchens and pages turning. Mara blinked, heart hammering, breath clouding in the cold morning air of the garage. "Comet!" The voice was strained, hoarse from calling. It echoed off the concrete walls, bouncing toward her. Comet's ears twitched. He sat up suddenly, hoodie sliding off his back, nose pointed toward the ramp. Mara pushed herself upright, blanket pooling at her waist. Footsteps clanged on the metal stairs. Light flooded in as someone pushed the side door all the way open. A man appeared at the top of the ramp, silhouetted against the gray morning. He was tall, in a black coat over a shirt that had probably cost more than everything Mara owned put together. His hair was damp, his jaw shadowed with stubble, his eyes scanning the shadows like he'd already imagined the worst. "Comet," he called again, voice cracking. The husky let out a sharp bark and bounded toward him, nails scrabbling on the concrete. The man dropped to his knees without caring about the grit on the floor. His arms closed around the dog, fingers digging into fur, forehead pressing to Comet's head. "Oh, thank God," he whispered into the ruff of fur. Oh, buddy, don't you ever do that again. Another figure appeared in the doorway, small and round and wrapped in a too puffy coat. A little girl with dark hair caught in a messy ponytail, cheeks chapped from crying. Compet, she squealed. Stumbling down the ramp, boots thumping, the husky spun, wagging so hard his whole body shook, and knocked her backward into the man's arms. He caught her, half laughing, half choking, hugging them both together. Mara sat very still on her nest of blankets, hands curled into the fabric. She felt like she was watching a scene from one of the picture books her mother used to read, the ones where lost things were always found by page 10. The man kissed the top of the girl's head. He's okay, he told her. See, he's okay. Someone was watching him. His gaze lifted. Their eyes met across the dim space. For a second, Mara wanted to disappear into the concrete, to become part of the pillar behind her, invisible again. Instead, she stayed where she was, knees drawn up, the story box beside her like a small, stubborn anchor. The man took in her blankets, her backpack, the dented can on the floor. His gaze snagged on the sketchbook lying open, Comet's drawn eyes staring back from the page. Something shifted in his expression. He stood slowly, still holding the girl's hand. Did you? He cleared his throat, voice rough. Did you find him last night? Mara nodded, throat dry. He almost got hit by a car, she said. He ran into the street. She shrugged, like it was nothing. I grabbed him, brought him in out of the rain. I couldn't call the number on his tag. The girl wriggled free and marched toward Mara with the fearless certainty of a child who had never been taught to be afraid of strangers. Thank you, she said, each word careful, like she'd practiced them. Comet's my best friend. Comet trotted after her, tail wagging, pausing to nudge Mara's shoulder with his nose as if to add his own thanks. Mara touched his fur once, fingers sinking into the now dry coat, then pulled her hand back. You're welcome, she said quietly. The man came closer, stopping a polite distance away. Ethan Vale, he said, that's my name. It rang a faint bell, something about a streaming platform. Headlines she'd glimpsed on TVs and storefronts. Billionaire? CEO? A man whose life existed in a completely different vocabulary. Mara, she said. Mara Lane. She didn't add a last name for the girl in case it ended up in some caption under a photo. This is Nora, Ethan said, hand resting on his daughter's shoulder. Nora beamed. Daddy said Comet was lost because he chased a squirrel, she informed Mara. I told him maybe someone nice found him. I was right. She sounded proud of herself. Mara's mouth twitched. You were, she said. He kept me awake all night. He snores. Nora's giggle bounced around the concrete. Ethan's gaze drifted again to the sketchbook. Did you draw that, he asked. Mara hesitated, then nodded. I drew him so I wouldn't forget what he looked like, she said. In case. She didn't finish. In case nobody came, Ethan supplied softly. He stepped closer to the sketchbook, careful not to spook her, and bent to look. The pencil lines were sure, the shading delicate. Comet's fur looked soft even on the toothy paper. His eyes had that same uncanny depth. Underneath, in small letters, she'd written star in the rain. Ethan let out a slow breath. These are good, he said. She shrugged, defensive. They're just sketches. Sometimes that's where the real story is, he said. She didn't know what to say to that. He straightened. I want to thank you properly, he said. Comet is important to us. Nora leaned against his leg. Mom picked him, she said, before she had to go. Mara's chest tightened. I'm sorry, she said. Nora nodded solemnly, as if accepting condolences on behalf of all children who had learned certain words too early. Ethan's jaw flexed once. Anyway, he said quietly, you saved him. You took care of him. You gave him his eyes flicked to the hoodie still lying where Comet had slept your coat. She suddenly felt very aware of her thin shirt, of the damp creeping into her bones. It was just for one night, she said. He was quiet for a moment. Where are you staying, he asked. She laughed, a small, brittle sound. You're looking at it, she said, gesturing at the shadows. Prime real estate, Great acoustics. He took that in without flinching. How long, he asked. She bristled. Long enough to know that answering that question never really helps, she said. His eyes softened. Fair, he said. Still, I'd like to offer you something. She stiffened. I don't take handouts, she said. I wasn't offering one, he replied calmly. I was offering a job. She blinked. A job, she repeated. He nodded. Komet is not great with dog walkers, he said. He bolts. He likes to chase things he shouldn't. And Nora, he looked down at his daughter. Nora likes stories. At night, when I have to be on calls, she needs someone to read with her, someone who knows how to draw stars in the rain. Nora lit up. I like your stories better than Daddy's, she told Mara confidentially. His are about numbers and meetings. Traitor, Ethan muttered under his breath, affection in his tone. He looked back at Mara. I have a guest room, he said. It's empty. You could stay there, take care of Comet, spend time with Nora. I'll pay you regularly. You'll have a key. If you decide you want to leave, you walk out the front door, not the back of a garage. Mara stared at him. Rain dripped somewhere in the distance. A car passed on the street outside, its tires hissing. She knew how this sounded. Too good, too clean, too much like the beginnings of a story that turns sour by the midpoint. You don't know anything about me, she said. I know you gave your last layer of warmth to a dog that wasn't yours, he said. I know you have talent. He nodded toward the sketchbook. I know Nora has already decided you're a good person, and she's a better judge of character than most people I pay 6 figures to advise me. Nora nodded vigorously, as if to emphasize this point. Mara looked at Comet. He wagged his tail, tongue lolling. She thought about the cold creeping back into the garage tonight when the rain started again. About eating beans from a can in the dark. She thought about a bed that didn't smell like mold, a door that locked, a corner where she could open the story box without worrying about the wind blowing pages away. Her throat tightened. Just for a while, she said. Ethan's shoulders relaxed as if he'd been holding his breath. Just for a while, he agreed. The guest room was bigger than the entire apartment she and her mother had once shared. It had a window that looked out over a backyard trimmed grass, a small pool covered for the season, a tree strung with fairy lights that looked like fallen stars caught in the branches. The bed felt too soft under Mara when she sat on it, mattress sinking under her weight like a quiet hand. She set her backpack down carefully, then lifted the story box out and placed it on the small desk by the window. It looked small there, a scuffed wooden box on a polished surface. Nora appeared in the doorway with Comet at her heels. Do you like it, she asked, bouncing on her toes. It's... Mara searched for a word that wasn't too much. Nice. It's ours, Nora said, as if correcting her. Now it's yours too. A little. Comet jumped onto this bed with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times. His paws left faint prints on the white duvet. Mara half rose to pull him down, then saw there were already old paw marks there and let him stay. I have to show you something, Nora said. She grabbed Mara's hand with sticky fingers and pulled her down the hall. The house was quiet in the way big houses often were insulated, sound absorbed into thick walls. Everything smelled faintly of citrus and something clean and expensive. Nora led her to a room with shelves along the walls. Children's books lined them in colorful waves. In the center of the room, a small tent had been set up, string lights draped around it. This is the story room, Nora said proudly. Mom used to read here. Now Daddy does when he's not tired. Tonight you can... Mara's chest tightened. She knelt to look at the titles on the shelves. Many of them were books she recognized from the library where her mother had taken her as a kid. Many she'd only ever seen in windows. Do you want to hear one of my stories? She asked slowly. Nora's eyes widened. You have your own. Mara nodded toward the story box down the hall. Some are my mom's, she said. Some are mine. They're not in books, just in pictures. And my head. Nora considered this, then nodded with solemn importance. I think those are real stories, she said. Book stories just copied. Mara laughed, the sound surprising her. Okay, she said. Tonight we'll try one of the real ones. Later, after dinner in a kitchen that gleamed and clattered in ways her hands had never belonged to, After Ethan had taken a conference call in a low voice in his office, the three of them curled up in the story room. Komet sprawled across the entrance of the tent like a furry guardian. Nora lay with her head in Mara's lap, listening with wide eyes as Mara spun a tale about a girl who drew doors wherever she went. Doors only she and the people she trusted could see. Ethan stood in the doorway, one shoulder against the frame, tie loosened. He watched Nora's lashes flutter as she fought sleep and lost. He watched Mara's hands move in small arcs as she described the way the drawn doors glowed when they were ready to open. When the story ended, Nora was breathing slowly, face smoothed out in a way it hadn't been since her mother died. Mara carefully shifted out from under her, tucking a blanket around the small body. She turned and found Ethan watching her. What she whispered. "Nothing," he said. He gestured vaguely toward the tent. "I haven't seen her that peaceful in a long time," he said. "Thank you." There was no embellishment in his voice, no pitch, no camera hovering. It was just a tired man saying thank you. Mara shrugged one shoulder. "She likes stories," she said, and Comet snores. "It's a good combination." He smiled, the lines around his eyes softening. His gaze flicked to the sketchbook she'd brought with her, now lying open on a beanbag chair. The top page was a quick drawing she'd done while Nora brushed her teeth earlier. Nora and Comet under the tree in the yard, fairy lights glowing overhead. "You really are good," he said. She deflected automatically. "They're just doodles." "Stop calling them that," he said gently. "They're not." Oh. She looked down. "Doesn't matter," she said. "They're mine. That's enough." She didn't know then how much that word mine would come to mean. The first time Ethan told her about the scandal, it was almost midnight. Mara was at the kitchen table with the story box open, sorting through pages for tomorrow's portfolio review. The overhead pendant cast a warm circle of light. The rest of the house was dark. Comet lay under the table with his head on her feet. Ethan came in, tie gone, top button open. He moved more quietly at night, like he was afraid of waking ghosts. He poured himself a glass of water, then hesitated. "Can't sleep?" he asked. Mara snorted softly. "I keep waiting for someone to tell me I don't actually belong in the room and I'm supposed to walk into tomorrow," she said. "Good anxiety exercise." He sat down opposite her. "You do belong," he said. She shrugged, eyes on the papers. "People like me don't usually get invited to brunches with art directors in West Hollywood," she said. "Unless we're serving coffee." "People like you," he repeated. She waved vaguely at herself. "People who live in garages and collect scar tissue for hobbies," she said. He looked at the story box. "People who carry around worlds in wooden boxes," he said. "Those are exactly the people who should be in those rooms." She didn't answer. He took a sip of water, then set the glass down carefully on a coaster. "Do you remember that story from last year?" he said slowly. "About a streaming platform that did a campaign on a woman who was unhoused, made a whole documentary series about her, raised money. Then she lost her kid anyway." Mara's jaw tightened. "Yeah," she said. "I remember." He met her eyes. "That was my company," he said. She blinked once. "You," she said. "Vale Media," he said. "We greenlit it." "I greenlit it." He looked down at his hands. "The crew found her at a shelter," he said. She was smart. Funny. She wanted to tell her story. They pitched it to me as a way to raise awareness of scenes and funds. And it worked. People cried. They donated. For a month, the internet called us heroes. He laughed once, humorless. When the cameras left, her life was still complicated. He said, "The court still took her kid. The shelter closed a year later anyway. We sent her a check that didn't fix anything. And my stock price went up." Silence stretched. Mara felt the familiar prickle of anger at the back of her neck. Anger she'd never had anyone to direct at before. Anger that usually just settled back into her bones. "At some point," Ethan said quietly, "I realized we treated her life like content. We cut the parts that didn't fit the arc. We focused on what made people donate. We didn't ask what she wanted the end of the story to look like." He rubbed his thumb along the condensation on his glass. "I tried to fix it afterward," he said. "Apologies, money, programs, but it was too late. The damage was done. People forgot her name, but they remembered the brand." He looked up. I'm telling you this because I need you to know I am painfully aware of what it looks like when a man like me brings a woman like you into his house. He said, I am trying very, very hard not to repeat my own mistakes. Mara held his gaze. The confession didn't absolve him. It wasn't meant to. But there was something raw in it. Something that wasn't for cameras or shareholders. Then why send my drawings to your publishing friends, she asked. Why get involved at all? Because they deserve to be seen, he said simply. Because my daughter fell asleep with a smile on her face for the first time in months. And the person who did that is sitting at my kitchen table with a box of magic and no business card. He spread his hands. I am trying to use the doors I can open, he said. But Mara, if you ever feel like I'm turning you into a case study, I need you to tell me out loud, even if it makes me look bad. Her fingers tightened on the edge of a page. I don't want to be anyone's angle, she said softly. I know, he said. She wasn't sure he did, not really, but he was trying. That was something. Yeah. The portfolio review was everything she'd feared and more. The gallery was bright and white and smelled faintly of coffee and perfume. People wore boots that didn't have holes in them and jackets that had never seen a thrift store rack. Mara stood in a corner clutching the story box, feeling like she had snuck into the wrong movie. The main editor, a woman with streaks of gray in her hair and ink smudges on her fingers, was kind. She leafed through the pages with care, not rushing, eyes lingering on details. These are wonderful, she said. Your mother had a gift. So do you. Mara swallowed. She never got to finish. She said, her stories. The editor nodded. Maybe you will, she said. We're always looking for stories that feel lived in. The market's full of things that look pretty but don't feel. She searched for a word. Earned, she settled on. Yours do. Warmth unfurled slowly in Mara's chest. Then another voice chimed in. So what's your story? Asked a younger editor hovering nearby. Glasses perched on the tip of his nose. Like your angle. Background. Readers love that. From X to Y. You know. Mara's skin crawled. My angle, she repeated. Yeah, he said. Like, once homeless, now, he waved a hand, indicating the air around them. It helps marketing if there's a hook. Her hand tightened on the edge of the story box. The main editor shot the younger one a look. Sometimes the work is the story, she said sharply. We'll be in touch. Mara. Mara nodded, but the words had already sunk in. Acidic. Angle. Hook. Once homeless, now. On the bus back to the house, she stared at the city sliding past the window. She saw billboards with faces on them. Words like inspiring and courageous stamped over people who were probably just tired. By the time she walked up the driveway past manicured hedges and security cameras, her heartbeat was a drum. Inside, voices floated from Ethan's office. She paused in the hallway when she heard her name. I'm telling you, we're not doing another documentary, Ethan was saying, sharper than she'd heard him before. No profiles, no From Streets to Storybooks series. I don't care how good the click-through would be. But the optics, another voice, smooth, PR slick. The optics, Ethan cut in, are that we do not exploit the life of a homeless artist for redemption points. Not again. Mara exhaled, some tension loosening. Then the other voice said, we still need a background check. Legal will insist. If anything messy pops up, it could blow back on us. It's not just charity this time. Ethan, if Vale Media money is attached to a book deal, Mara stepped back like she'd been slapped. The rest of the sentence blurring. Homeless artist, background check, optics. She moved silently down the hall, heart thudding. In the kitchen, she set the story box on the table and stared at it. There were two lives on these pages, her mother's and hers. So if someone else got to decide how to package them, what did it matter if the cover was shiny? That night, while Ethan put Nora to bed, Mara took the story box upstairs and sat on the floor of the guest room, back against the bed, legs crossed. She opened the lid, lifted out a drawing of the girl with the lantern. Do I trust him? She whispered to the paper. The girl, of course, had no answer. And the next morning, everything cracked. She wasn't trying to snoop. She was just looking for Comet. He'd learned to nudge Ethan's office door open with his muzzle and sneak in to curl up on the rug while Ethan worked. If Mara didn't find him before his walk, he'd pretend not to hear her until he was ready. She pushed the door open a few inches and called softly, "Comet." The dog was there, face on his paws, eyes lifting in lazy acknowledgement. Ethan's computer screen glowed on the desk above him. Mara's gaze snagged on the subject line of the top email. Potential narrative from streets to storybooks. A Veil Media-supported journey. Her stomach dropped. She stepped closer before she could stop herself, eyes scanning the preview text. In light of your recent philanthropic initiatives, this could be an opportunity to reshape the conversation around Veil Media's past missteps while highlighting the CEO's commitment to. Her vision blurred. "Don't touch anything," she murmured to Comet, which didn't make sense, but saying it out loud kept her hands from shaking. She backed out of the room and walked straight to the kitchen, the air cold in her lungs. The storybox sat on the counter where she'd left it after showing Nora a new drawing that morning. Mara slid the lid on with more force than necessary. Ethan found her 10 minutes later stuffing clothes into her backpack. "What are you doing?" he asked, breathless, like he'd run down the stairs. "Leaving," she said. He stared. "Did something happen at the review?" he asked. "Did someone say something?" "Someone said angle?" She said. "Someone said once homeless. Now. Someone said marketing loves that. And then your PR wrote an email that might as well be a sequel to your last disaster." Realization flashed across his face. "Mara," he said, "if you saw that email, it's exactly what I've been fighting against. I haven't answered it because my answer is no." "You didn't delete it," she said. "Deleting it doesn't make the instinct go away in their heads." He snapped, then calmed his voice. "I'm trying to change a culture. It doesn't happen with one button." And in the meantime, she asked, shoulders rigid, "I'm supposed to stand here, smile for the cameras, and hope you win your little internal war." His jaw clenched. "There are no cameras," he said. "I have made that very clear." "For now," she said. He stepped closer. "Do you honestly think I would put you through what that woman went through?" he asked, quieter. She flinched. "I think you already are," she said. He froze. Her throat burned. "I crawled out of the rain," she said, voice shaking. "I slept in garages and behind dumpsters and under bleachers. I know what it feels like to be invisible. Until someone decides your pain makes a good story. I can't." She swallowed hard. "I won't do it again." "Mara, I didn't crawl out of the rain just to become your redemption arc," she said. The words landed between them like a dropped glass. He stared at her for a moment. He looked less like the man from magazine covers and more like someone who had just realized he'd stepped on a fault line he didn't see. "I don't want you as an arc," he said finally, low. "I want you as a person, here, with Nora, with Comet, with your work." "I thought I was making space for that." "You're making a space," she said. "One you designed. One where you still get to direct the story. I need somewhere I'm not a supporting character in somebody else's press release." He opened his mouth, closed it. Nora's voice floated down the stairs, unaware. "Daddy Mara, where's my green crayon?" Comet trotted into the kitchen, nails clicking on the tile, tail wagging. Mara's heart twisted. "You can stay," Ethan said. It sounded desperate and quiet at once. "We can do this without the company, without the publisher, without—" "This isn't just about them," she said. "It's about you. It's about me. It's about who gets to hold the pen when my life is on the page." He flinched like she'd slapped him. She lifted the story box and slipped it into her bag. "If I let Brenda come back," she said, "it has to be because I chose it, not because it made sense in a Veil Media narrative." Nora appeared in the doorway, green crayon in hand, hair sticking up. "Are you going somewhere?" she asked, confusion creasing her brow. Mara's voice softened. "For a while," she said. "I have some drawing to do." Nora's eyes filled. "Did we do something wrong?" she whispered. Mara's gut twisted. "No," she said. "You did everything right." "Then why?" "Because grown-ups are messy," Mara said. "And stories are messy. And sometimes people have to figure things out apart before they can figure them out together. Nora didn't understand all the words, but she felt the shape of them. Her lower lip trembled. Will you still tell me stories, she asked. Mara's throat closed. If you want me to, she said. When I can, she knelt, hugged Nora tight, breathed in the smell of crayons and all and the faint citrus of the house. Then she stood, slung the backpack over her shoulder, and walked out into the daylight. The sky was clear now, the air washed clean. She stepped through the gate and down the hill, the house shrinking behind her with every step. She did not look back. The studio was small and smelled faintly of frying onions from the restaurant downstairs. But it had a door that locked and a window that overlooked the street. Mara paid for it with the advance from the publisher who had called 2 weeks after the review. We'd like to develop into picture books with you, the main editor had said, based on that Star in the Rain sketch. If you're willing. Your story, your way. We'll keep Vale Media out of the contract if that makes you more comfortable. Ethan agreed. Mara had listened, one hand on the story box. She'd said yes with conditions: full creative control, ownership of the characters her mother had invented, no marketing that used her housing history as a selling point without her explicit approval. The editor had surprised her by agreeing. Now, pages lay spread across the little table by the window. Comet slept on the floor at her feet, head resting on her sneakers. Ethan had driven him over the day she moved in. Leash loose, eyes sad. He'll always come with me when you're done, he'd said. But when you need him, he's yours too. They had worked out a custody schedule that made Nora laugh and gave lawyers headaches. The book's working title was The Girl Who Saved a Star in the Rain. The girl in the story did not live in a parking garage. She lived in a city that felt like the one outside Mara's window, but softer at the edges. She met a dog who shimmered with starlight. She learned to let people walk beside her without stealing her light. Mara drew late into the night, lines flowing. Sometimes, when the street below grew quiet, she heard footsteps on the stairs and the murmur of a familiar voice. Not Ethan's, Nora's. Daddy says we're not supposed to bother you when you're working. She would call through the door, but I brought snacks. Mara would smile and open the door. Nora would burst in, backpack bulging with cookies and juice box and a wrinkled drawing. One afternoon, Nora handed her a piece of paper that stopped her breath. It was a crayon drawing of the house on the hill. In front of it were 4 figures, a tall one with scribbled hair, a shorter one with a triangle skirt, a small one with pigtails, and a dog that took up almost as much space as all the people. Above them, in shaky letters, Nora had written home. Underneath, in smaller print, she'd added, please come back if you want to. Mara pinned the drawing above her desk. She didn't answer the question in it for weeks. Then came the gallery invitation. A small show, emerging illustrators, a chance to hang 1 or 2 pieces on white walls and let strangers look. She chose the backyard. She painted Nora and Comet under the fairy light tree, their faces lit with the kind of joy that didn't know it was being watched. On the steps behind them, she painted the suggestion of an adult figure holding a book just enough to see knees, hands, the edge of a page. No face. The adult was part of the world, but not the center of it. On the night of the opening, the gallery hummed with conversation. Glasses clinked. People murmured about line work and color palettes and market trends. Mara stood in a corner near her painting, hands clasped behind her back. She heard them before she saw them. Comet's nails clicked on the polished floor. Nora's laugh followed, bright as bells. Ethan's lower, steadier tone murmured something she didn't catch. They stopped in front of the painting. Nora gasped. That's us, she said. That's our tree. Comet wagged at his painted twin. Ethan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. You put me on the steps, he said quietly. Mara stepped out of the shadows. You're always on the steps, she said, checking the locks, watching the yard, letting us have the middle. He turned for a second. Something like relief and regret flickered across his face. Nora wanted to see your work, he said. And you, Mara asked. I wanted to see if the girl who saved a star in the rain still wanted anything to do with the idiot who almost turned her into content, he said. Nora looked between them with the intense interest of a child following a story's climax. "Daddy wrote you a letter," she blurted, unable to hold it in. "Nora," Ethan said gently. "What she said, you did." She dug into her little backpack and produced an envelope slightly bent at the corners. Mara took it. Inside was a folded handkerchief, the kind Nora liked to embroider in shaky, colorful letters. This one had an M stitched on it. There was also a copy of Nora's home drawing and a page torn from Ethan's notebook. Mara unfolded the note. "You never needed saving," it said in his careful handwriting. "You only ever needed space to draw your own story. I'm learning how to stand in the background." She looked up. "I'm trying," he said. "That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. If you tell me to walk away, I will. No cameras, no campaigns. I'll just be a man who brings his kid and her dog to look at art sometimes." Nora's hand found Mara's. "I don't want you to walk away," she whispered. Mara squeezed her fingers. She searched Ethan's face for any hint of the hungry gleam she'd seen in the eyes of men who saw opportunity where they should have seen human beings. She didn't find it. She found fear, hope, and something like humility. "If I come back," she said slowly, choosing each word, "it has to be my home too, not a chapter in your comeback story. I don't want to be the girl you're proud of because she proves you're better now." He nodded. "If you come back," he said, "you come back as Mara Lane, author, illustrator, Nora's favorite storyteller. The person who complains about my coffee needing more sugar and tells me to put my phone away at dinner. And if one day you decide you need to leave, you leave because you choose it. Not because of a headline or an email or anything with my logo on it." A reluctant smile tugged at her mouth. "We'll need to renegotiate Comet's custody then," she said. "In his dreams, he belongs to me," Ethan said. "In waking life, he clearly belongs to you two." Comet wagged like he understood and approved this division. Nora squeezed Mara's hand harder. "Does that mean yes?" she asked. Mara looked at her, at the freckles on her nose, at the trust in her eyes. She looked at Ethan, at the apology he wasn't dressing up as anything else. She looked at her painting of the backyard, at the figure on the steps who had no face because she hadn't known, when she painted it, if he'd earned one. "I think," she said, "it means I'm ready to draw the next pages." Months later, the house on the hill felt different. Not because the furniture had changed, though Mara had added a few bright cushions and a battered armchair she'd found at a thrift store and fallen in love with. Not because the security system had been upgraded or the kitchen had been renovated. It felt different because the air was fuller. There was more laughter, more mess, more life. The story box lived on a shelf in the story room now, next to books with Mara's own name on the spine. The Girl Who Saved a Star in the Rain had a place of honor, its cover showing a girl and a dog under an umbrella made of light. On its copyright page, in small letters, it said, "Story and Illustrations by Mara Lane," based on the stories of Eliza Lane. Under that, in even smaller letters, was a line Mara had insisted on. "This story belongs to everyone who has ever had to write their own ending." Vale Media's logo was nowhere to be seen. Ethan had invested quietly through a separate fund and never asked for his name on anything. He wore that anonymity like a promise. On a late afternoon in early summer, Mara sat on the back steps with a sketchbook on her knees. The fairy lights in the tree twinkled in the softening light. Nora lay on the grass coloring in a page from a printout of Mara's next book, tongue sticking out between her teeth in concentration. Comet sprawled beside her, ears twitching at every car that passed on the street below. Inside, through their open door, the sound of a dishwasher hummed. Ethan walked out carrying 2 mugs of tea. He offered one to her. "Thanks," she said. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed, not so close that she felt crowded. On the step between them lay a folder. "What's that?" she asked. "The latest contract from the publisher," he said, "for book 2. She made a face. "Do I have to read it now?" she asked. "No," he said. "You can throw it at me and tell me to mark the parts you should care about, which I've already done." She laughed. "Such romance," she said. "Nothing says forever like clauses and subclauses." He sipped his tea. "Forever is a long time," he said. Let's start with, as long as you want to be here. She looked at him over the rim of her mug. You're doing it again, she said. What he asked, genuinely puzzled. Standing into the background, she said, making sure I see where the exits are. He smiled, a little crooked. Old habits, he said. I spent a lot of years blocking exits for people without realizing it. I'd rather err in the other direction now. She set her tea down and picked up her pencil. On the blank page, she drew the outline of 4 figures on a set of steps. A girl, a dame, a man, a woman. She left their faces blank for now. She knew them all too well to hurry. Nora looked up from the grass. What are you drawing? She asked. Us, Mara said. Nora scrambled up and came to peer over her shoulder. You forgot the word, Nora said seriously. What word? Mara asked. Nora took the pencil gently from her and, in the corner of the page, wrote in large, careful letters, home. Mara felt something warm and solid settle in her chest. She looked at the word, then at the house, then at the people around her. It wasn't perfect. Ethan still worked too late some nights and forgot to eat. Mara still woke up, sometimes thinking she was back in the garage, heart racing, reaching for the story box to make sure it was still there. Nora still had bad dreams about hospitals and doorways where people didn't come back. But when those things happened now, there were more hands to catch them, more voices to say, I'm here. Keep going. The sun dipped lower. The lights in the tree glowed brighter. Mara added lines to the drawing slowly, carefully, as if the act might change the world around her. And in a way, it already had. She had crawled out of the rain, not to stand in someone else's spotlight, but to find a place where she could put down her box of stories, open it, and let the pages breathe. Now, on a hill in a city that had once ignored her, she sat on the steps of a house where her name was on the mailbox along with 2 others. She pressed the pencil to the paper and began to draw faces one by one, with all their angles and imperfections and light. Inside, the washing machine beeped. Comet huffed and rolled over. Nora started humming a song her mother had once sung and Mara had finished. Above them, the first stars of the evening appeared, not falling this time, just watching.